Our next guest did not want to be honored when Good Counsel called because, as she likes to say, we haven't won anything yet. But we recognize her for continuing to organize and operate the largest civil rights event in the world. For the past 36 years, Nellie Gray has dedicated herself to work on the many and varied activities surrounding the annual March for Life, of which she is founder and president. Ms. Nellie Gray.
Thank you very, very much. What I'm talking about is we haven't really come to some of those points where we can really see the products, as thank goodness Good Counsel can see. You know, when you're telling these stories of the work, and I'm sitting there listening to it, and I think of the hours and hours that go in minute details. I'm just in awe of putting together a project like that, which is so visible and helps people that you can see right now. That's the wonderful part. I come from a World War II period. So when I heard about abortion in my beloved America and Roe versus Wade, I couldn't believe that this was America. And it was going to go up to the Supreme Court, and I said, thank goodness that's the end of that, and I forgot about it for quite some time. I couldn't imagine any country that would permit the intentional killing of innocent preborn children. What I didn't know was the thing that was the question of the court at the time, and I asked, when is a baby a baby? I just couldn't quite visualize this. I knew that abortion was intentionally killing a baby, but I didn't know when a baby was a baby. So I asked the doctor, and he began to explain to me fertilization, and he was going to tell me a lot more about it. I said, don't go any farther. I got the picture now. A baby is a baby at fertilization, and therefore we absolutely must be able to have protection for all the children in the United States. And it was a very short time after that all of us, many of you here probably remember, that a dumpster was found in California, a large dumpster, filled with the bodies of these preborn children. They were out. Many photos were taken. You and I probably use them on our fundraising letters and in our materials now to try to educate people. What is it that we're talking about? After all, World War II was over, and the Holocaust was over, and we had all seen the pictures of the bodies of the Holocaust, and it was so cruel that there were the Nuremberg trials to try people, and the material about what is the Nuremberg trial was the trial itself set a whole group of principles, and America set in judgment of the country that we had just engaged. We were through with the battle, and we were trying people for crimes against humanity, which was singling out a group of human beings and treating them as non-persons, killing them, and so forth. And the Nuremberg trials set up the principles of saying that this is a crime against humanity. I couldn't believe the culture in my America, and this was a feeling in the days of World War II, that our culture had changed so absolutely much. It seemed then there was nothing to do except try to overturn Roe versus Wade. At one time, I wasn't concerned about the bill. I just didn't see it as a problem. But once you see the dumpster, and once you see the children, and once you think about the Nuremberg trials, then you began to understand exactly the evil that is going on in our country. And once I came to that point, one of the items that kept concerning me all the time is, we know about these preborn children, we can see them. We can see this tragedy. And all of a sudden, it occurred to me, this isn't the whole tragedy. There are mothers. What happens to the women who are participating in any way in all of the activity? of abortion. What happened to these women? There wasn't really an answer 35 years ago about exactly what did happen to them. But now I have met and been with many post-abortion women. They are victims. The babies are killed. The mother is there. Many people think that they're doing her a service by allowing her to do whatever she thinks she wants to do at the moment. But when you work with groups such as the post-abortion groups, you see that each of these mothers, and the fathers also, who have participated in the intentional killing of their children, are now victims themselves. So much so that the first time I met some of the post-abortion women, they were inarticulate. They couldn't talk about it. They were in a suffering mode. I also learned then about the services, such as Good Counsel. Do you realize what an extremely important part of the whole pro-life movement it is? To provide services to women who are in sheer desperation. Of the post-abortion women whom I've met, and I've met many now and worked with them, you'll see them at the March for Life, that what you are seeing is a pressure that is on these women. So, and it may come from any place. It may come from their homes and their families and their parents, or the father of the child, or an employer. It comes and the pressure is building on the women. Really, as Chris was talking about a while ago, the pressure is so extreme that many of the women said, I kept saying I didn't want the abortion. I kept saying I didn't want it, but the pressure kept coming. Now, what you're doing, Chris, with this group of homes, is that you're beginning to relieve that pressure so that the evil that is there of killing will then be able to have the love and care of neighbor for neighbor. And that's what Good Counsel is all about, is understanding the tragedy that is there of a woman who is pregnant without support, and then somebody comes in, she's never seen them before, doesn't know what Good Counsel is, doesn't know what your workers are, doesn't know who you are, but finally there's someone to truly treat her as a neighbor and bring her the love and care and the services that she needs, neighbor to neighbor. Now, these recent elections, 2 days ago, that we have just had, show us right now the important need to overturn Roe versus Wade. You can provide the services, and that we must do at this time. But we must also make sure that we take our country back and that we do not have a culture here in our government to intentionally kill innocent preborn children and persuading women to kill their children when they really do not have that intention at all. Why does Roe versus Wade then continue? One thing is most of it's out of sight and out of mind. The dumpsters are out of sight. Nobody knows what the children look like. Nobody knows about that grieving mother. There's excellent language to describe a right of a woman to control her own body. And in a feminist abortionist world, this business of trying to provide a right in which some think would make the woman have greater stature is denying our culture right now of getting the evil out of this. This is an evil that some women are grasping to also, thinking they are promoting themselves, unfortunately, in their provisions and so forth. And why is it that we have the abortion imposed on other people? Here is one of our candidates, for instance, was saying that he himself had already agreed that abortion was not something he was wanted in his country, sort of. And he said, however, who am I to impose my view on anyone? Well, he's a public official. He opposes his view on everybody all the time. Whenever he votes, he imposes his view on some issue. And now here he is trying to shy away from stopping an evil in his country. Do you really think that a public official today, as was done in our country even about 100 years ago, do you think anybody would say, well, I'm really against slavery. I really don't think it's a good thing, but I don't want to impose my view on anyone. If a slave owner wants to have slaves and kill them and use them, we'd let him do it. Can you imagine anyone saying a statement like that today? No, you can't. And so why is it that we have our culture now accepting the evil of intentionally killing preborn children as if this is a good for women, men, and our own country? Why does it keep on going? In my view, the issue that we have to worry about right now is Roe v. Wade must be overturned. It would have been long ago, except in 35 years ago when Roe v. Wade came down. There was a division within the movement about how are we going to approach overturning Roe versus Wade. What does Roe v. Wade mean? And so many people in our movement who detest the intentional killing of innocent preborn children have let themselves define abortion as no abortion except to save the life of the mother for rape and incest. And you know what that exception says? The person who states that exception is actually attempting to authorize some intentional killing of the innocent children, the ones who are conceived by rape or incest, the ones who may be subject to impairment of the health of the mother, whatever that happens to mean. And so we have a language to continue to say abortion is here by the feminists. It is their right to control their body. Many churches, unfortunately, are not trying to get rid of the evil there, but rather to keep it going also. And so we have this dilemma of what are you going to do about abortion? Are you going to stop it? Are you going to talk about it? Are you going to think about it? Are you going to make sure you don't offend a feminist? So if we do that, we will continue with a type of structure which says, do not kill the innocent preborn children except for the life and health of the mother, rape and incest. And you see what is happening to those types of exception clauses also in the voting booths throughout the United States right now. The issues have been before many of the states, and they're not going through without an exception clause. But what that exception clause is an effort by people operating in the name of right to life to straddle the whole issue. You hear the usual word is come to common ground so that we can have common ground on the issue of abortion. Friends, there's no common ground. You either kill babies or you don't. There's no in between. There's nowhere to go in between. And so the issue is you must indeed say, yes, we're going to stop abortion. Now, when you do that, we are up against a very strong force, which is a name-calling of saying you're a hard-liner, you can't be satisfied, you just stand and stomp your feet, and you can't get anything done. But let me tell you what I think about the sad part of those exception clauses is that for 35 years, by negotiating with feminist abortionists, the evil will go on and on and on without putting the principles in to stop the evil. Now, how do we really work with this issue? When I began hearing about Roe v. Wade, I thought, my goodness, there's no way to fashion something about intentionally killing innocent preborn children. The whole thing is actually killing people, intentionally killing innocent people. And so, when the March for Life began, the issue was already there of the exception clause, which I call the Achilles heel of the pro-life movement, that you won't stop abortion unless you're going to stop it. This means educating on life principles. We have with us the March for Life annual report. You'll get copies of it as you leave, I think. Notice the life principles on the back of the cover, and on the inside of the cover, there's explanation of those life principles, and they're basically secular homicide law. Thou shalt not kill. And what it says is, we understand that a human life is in existence at fertilization. There's no justification for intentionally killing an innocent human being. If you're in doubt as to whether or not a human being exists at fertilization, resolve the doubt in taking care of the human being and admitting that this is indeed a human being. Now, when we come with those principles, and they're originally when we worked on them, we put them in the context of don't kill. And as a group, it was about 30 people of pro-life people along the East Coast here, and we were in a meeting, and they said, you know, this sounds so negative, don't kill. We should reverse it and make it very positive on a duty for all of us, intentionally to save the preborn children. Now, that's the way they are cast. It is a duty for us to assure that each human being in existence at fertilization, as life is protected. That also is added to by another secular situation of the Nuremberg trials. And also within the annual report, you will find a sheet telling you what was in the Nuremberg trials, which after the World War II and after people saw the Holocaust, they simply said, this is a crime against humanity. And the defense at that time was, well, we were just doing what our bosses told us to do. They told us to put the bodies there and to kill people. And the answer by the Nuremberg trials was, you knew you weren't supposed to do this. This is evil. And therefore, you are also participating in something evil, and you're held responsible for it. Now, when the whole question comes up about our moral situation, then after we had drafted the life principles, quite by accident one day, I was looking for something else in some of the Catholic doctrines, books, and I come across the encyclical written in December 1930, a very long encyclical on marriage, but there are 3 pages in it of the encyclical Costi Connubii. And those 3 pages set forth Roman Catholic teaching on abortion. They are identical with the life principles that we drew up as part of the secular principles, the life principles, the secular law, thou shalt not kill. There's an addition in Costi Connubii where they're quoting St. Paul of saying, you may not do evil that good may come of it. So what you've got now, what we're looking for, is to overturn Roe v. Wade. And how are we going to do it? We're going to follow the secular law and the religious law, put them together, and that means stop killing even any of the innocent preborn children. Now, that puts the law of God and the law of man together to guide us. And there is no way that we can accept in America an exception for intentionally killing an innocent born or preborn human being. I want to say also that it is not necessary to ever intentionally kill an innocent human being, the innocent preborn children. Why? Because in the life principles you will find the whole principle of equal care. Now, what equal care is, it says for a pregnant mother and a preborn child, you've got 2 people at least, both of whom are innocent. And the equal care provision says that a doctor is required to treat the two human beings with equal care. Try to save both of them. Oh, maybe you can't save both of them. Maybe he can't save both of them. Maybe he can't save either one of them. But the principle is you may not intentionally kill either the preborn child to save the life of the mother or the mother to save the preborn child. Think of a situation of a car accident in the mother's head, a pregnant woman in a car, and her head goes through the windshield. The doctor probably can't do anything to try to save that mother. But he also sees he may not be able to save the baby. The baby may not have enough lung power to be able to exist. However, the principle involved is equal care for both the mother and the preborn child in order to try to save both of them. I want to touch on an important, very important approach that is being talked about for overturning Roe v. Wade. You may have heard the words an incremental approach, which sounds very good. After all, this is set up as a way of using, setting up principles by which you will try to save as many human beings as you can. That is, if a law, if a statement in Congress would say something like, no abortions except to save the life of the mother, and rape and incest, and that's the best that you can get, saying, well, we'll save some babies and some mothers if we go ahead and assure that this much of the law is enacted. That is what has been happening now for 35 years. And we don't have legislation to overturn Roe v. Wade, in addition to which we have, unfortunately, the partial birth ban, where the Supreme Court stated, yes, it would uphold the ban, but the problem with this is that remember, there are 5 justices there, 5 justices appointed supposedly who would be pro-life. They actually have written a decision, which now in the text of a Supreme Court decision, it too is in the annual report, the copy of the booklet that you will get, where 5 justices now no longer have to worry about whether or not life begins at fertilization. They know that, and they have stated exactly what an abortion looks like. They talk about pulling the arms and legs off of preborn children. And at the end of the decision, where they say that, well, doctors may worry that if we have this ban, they would be subject to the ban and therefore be prosecuted. So the justices say, well, remember, partial birth abortion applies only to the live preborn children. So if you think you may be prosecuted, just put an injection in the child and be sure the child is dead before the child is delivered. Now, this is supposed to be the conservative court that we're talking about that will help us stop abortion. With what we really have, unfortunately, is the court accepting Roe v. Wade, saying it will not overturn Roe v. Wade, and even going farther and saying that they do understand what abortion looks like. But after all, we have to do this in order for the court to continue its decision of Roe v. Wade rather than overturn that decision. The doctrine of stare decisis is what they are talking about, which means once the court has made a statement that in later jurisdictions and in other jurisdictions throughout the United States and for later court cases coming before the United States Supreme Court, they will continue the decision and not overturn itself. Unfortunately, that's exactly what this court has said it will do. It will not overturn Roe v. Wade. Now, what we're seeing after these elections right now is that something must happen to overturn Roe v. Wade. This election shows that we now have people in the highest office in our country, and they will not attempt to overturn Roe v. Wade, and have even promised some of the feminist abortionists that unfortunately they would put in bills such as the Freedom of Choice Act, which will undercut any of the even incremental approaches that we already have on the books. So it's going to be very hard for our country to try to get Roe v. Wade overturned by our court or by our political system as it may shape up. So in my judgment, what we have to do is not even think about trying to rely too much on the officials in this status right now, but to educate them. And our journey right now must be an education of the public officials. And the way we're going to have to do that is from the bottom up. It's not going to come to us of saving the preborn children from the high officials and come down to us. It is our job now to set in place a working grassroots group throughout the United States with no exceptions and no compromise in our statements, and the officials and all American citizens must indeed know that there is a group of pro-life people in America who are very, very serious about the grieving that we feel that our culture has so been corrupted that we must now take over in a peaceful, educational way, being sure that everyone understands what a preborn child looks like who has been aborted, what a mother looks like who is suffering, what a father looks like who is suffering, and put ourselves together in a grassroots posture that insists that our public officials at all levels, local, state, and federal level, shall indeed put forth legislation now, not a constitutional amendment right now, but legislation to overturn Roe v. Wade. We begin, I hope, as all of you join with us, at the march. This will be the 36th annual March for Life on January 22, on a Thursday. That's 2 days after the newly elected president will be inaugurated in Washington, D.C. Our radios in Washington are telling us about the amount of people who are coming will be well over 1.5 million tourists in Washington for the inauguration. And the hotels are very happy about that. And they're telling us they expect that kind of a turnout. So at the March for Life, we will be probably the largest group of, certainly of pro-life people, but of grassroots people coming to this new president, a new Congress, and our message is going to be, remember, that the life principles mean equal care with no exception. That's the theme of this march. The 36th annual March for Life is remember the life principles. Those life principles I'm talking about are those that match the law of both God and man. And those principles mean equal care for innocent people, no exception and no compromise. And what that means then is that we got the culture of our country back to where it began, in God. Thank you very much.